tear your soul apart. Welcome to the Matt and Mark Horror Show.
We're the Monster Squad.
Testing. Francis Ford Coppola, testing. All right, should we just do this?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm ready.
Do it! Hey! You've seen us in the fog, or maybe you didn't. We were in the fog. Welcome to the Matt and Mark Horror Show. That was a terrible intro. I'm going to do that again. This week, Mark flashes the guns. The gun show returns. He flashes his boobs, the moobs, and the guns. Guns and moobs.
Can I do this? Oh, I'm too old to do the armpit fart.
You need like a super sweaty, dirty, like the Little Rascal kind of kids, like doing that shit with the armpit. Hey, welcome to the Matt and Mark Horror Show. We're back with a special episode this week. So let me explain to you people what we're doing. What the hell you mean, you people? This is what we're doing. Is if you're unfamiliar with our HHN wrap-ups, we do these every year. Mark and I are massive fans of Halloween Horror Nights, and we usually attend the event in Hollywood. We did go to Orlando one year. We might go there in the future again. But that's what we do. We go, we
not
visit.
Underwater.
As long as it's not underwater. No, dude. Fuck. I thought about the part. I was like, dude. And this happened the other year, too, that we were so close to going to Orlando again. We got a hurricane scare, and here we go again with fucking Hurricane Milton.
Is it like, does it start during hurricane season?
Basically, in the Southeast, as someone from the Southeast, anytime from the end of July onward is hurricane season, which sucks. Some years you get quiet years, other years it's like this year where it's like we're in a real fucking Roland Emmerich movie. But we are doing a special episode this week. Mark and I go to the event. We go to Halloween Horror Nights, and we come back, and we talk about our experience at the event, we rank all the houses, we rank all the scare zones. So, if you're here for movie talk this week, this is not the week for you. But we will be talking about movie-related things.
Movie-related.
Yeah, we'll talk about movie-related haunted houses that we were inside. But that's what's going on this week. So, there you have it. This is our annual HHN wrap-up special episode for Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood 2024. We will return to normal format next week, reviewing a movie and such. And with that, we should say Tommy will be here next week. And you know what? We'll let Tommy tell us his experience when he's here. But that's why Tommy's not here this week. He's going to be joining us for the movie episode next week.
He will be back.
He will be back.
By the way, I would say to anyone, maybe it's not about movies per se, but it could encourage you to actually attend this event, so you might want to listen anyway.
Exactly. Let me do some quick house clean before we get started. You know what? I'll do this one. I'm in the mood for this one.
You son of a bitch.
You son of a bitch. Hey, follow the Matt and Mark Movie Show on YouTube. The link is in the show notes. We're trying to put all the episodes up from our new pods up there so you can like and subscribe and all that cringy stuff. Socials.
Ring the bell too.
Ring the bell and smash that ass. You can find us on Instagram at the Matt and Mark Movie Show. Voicemail 707-948-6707. Call us, leave us a message. We will play it on the show. And that's it. That's all I got for housekeeping. Let's just get to the fucking business. Mark, this was our 4th year going to HHN, man. How do you feel after being a veteran of 4 HHNs?
It is crazy. The one thing I noticed is like every time we've gone, it just keeps getting better and better. So
yeah,
kudos to Universal for always amping it up. And I would say this is probably my favorite year yet. And it's kind of crazy that we've gone for 4 years because, you had like a global pandemic, all this crazy shit that could have killed it off, and it survived.
And it happened in between because our first year was pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic happened.
That was kind of funny because you and I were talking like, yeah, let's make this a tradition.
Make it a yearly tradition. And then the world ended for like 11 months. Yeah. And then we came back. So this is our 4th year, and hopefully we get to do it every year. As long...
One of the reasons why we went to Florida.
Yeah, dude. Oh, I really hope... I'm not even going to make jokes. I really hope that hurricane's looking, like, fierce, dude.
Well, I remember last year, do you remember, like, some of the... Not to... Our hearts go out to the people, too, but since this is the HHN episode, I do remember last year some of the park flooded, right? Yeah,
some of the park did flood. It was funny, the year you and I went to Orlando, there was a big hurricane scare, like 3 days we were supposed to arrive, like before we were supposed to arrive. Thankfully, it didn't hit as hard, or if it did, it was
gorgeous.
It was gorgeous when we went. It was sunny every day. We didn't see a drop of rain. But yeah, dude, it's looking rough for Hurricane Milton. I'm really scared for the event out there. I feel for those people that have planned vacations and have planned to go visit horror nights, and some of the people, as you've seen, dude. You know, you go to the parks, you're part of these groups, and there are people who come from all over the world.
Yeah.
So people have come from Scotland and shit with their giant families, and they're like, oh, fuck, we're in the middle of a hurricane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that shit's expensive, too. It isn't cheap.
No, so it's pricey.
If you get flooded out, it's like, then it's like your hotel, your airline, all the... I mean, all these events are so expensive nowadays. It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, but I would say it is expensive. But for me, I'll just speak for myself. I think it's worth every penny.
I agree.
Every penny. We should say, so, Mark, what's different for us this year in 2024, we won't keep looking back. What's different for us this year is that Mark and I actually went to the event multiple nights. Usually we divvy up our nights. We'll go to, like, HHN, then we'll go to Knott's, and we'll go do something else. Like, this year I was like, listen... Our brains are turning to mush every day. We're getting older. It's harder for us to remember this shit. We could barely remember movies we saw last week. We're like, how the fuck are we going to retain, just in life, like retain friend memories from these friend trips that we take? And I was like, oh, by doing them more than once, right? So the strategy this year was, let's go to the event for multiple nights. So that way, you know, A, we experience the event multiple nights, but B, if you have a bad run of a house, you're not just reduced to just judging that house by that shitty walkthrough that you had. They have more chances to kind of redeem themselves and come back.
That's a great excuse, but we all know we're just planning this as though we have dementia.
Yeah. It's a dementia trip is really what it is. But yes, it was very exciting because usually too with our old trips, you know, just to give you guys a little glimpse back, is that when we have our trips, we go through one house. If we love a house, we'll repeat it. But you know, you only have the one night, so you're not really getting that much experience. Here, I think we went through every house at least twice. Some houses we went through 3 and 4 times. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, too, is it's like, if you just do the one, even if you do, say, for example, the RIP tour, and you get to hit every house, sometimes it just ends so late that you don't have the energy or even the time to go back.
Yeah.
Because, like, at least in LA, for those familiar, you have to go through all those escalators just to get to the bottom section. So... Yeah. It's kind of, I'm glad we did it this way. So that was a great strategy. It was actually nice to do that, like, express pass first. Like,
yeah, we should say, so that's how we did it. Night 1, we did express pass early entry. If you guys don't know what that is, that's basically early entry means that the event starts at 5:30. Not every house is open at 5:30. A few are open at 5:30. And they gradually start to, like, they stagger openings. So by 6 o'clock, another 2 houses are open, 6:30. Basically, the idea is if you get early entry, you get access to the houses before the general populace comes in, and it gives you more time to, like, do all the houses before the event is over. You combine that with an express pass, so we can just kind of keep hitting houses over and over, and it was a recipe for fucking success, dude. We were going hard on that shit. That first fucking night, we went hard. Dude, our first fucking house, we went through at 5:30. The sun was still out. It was fucking bananas, but it was great, man. Like, we did early express access one night, early access express. Jesus, I can't fucking talk today. And the second night we did our RIP tour because we're fancy pantses, and we're like, hey, you know what? Let's now experience the VIP version of this tour. Mark, I was gonna say, overall thoughts on this year's event. before we get started from you. Like, what did you think about how the event was run in terms of how it ranked with the other years? Overall thoughts.
Well, let me say, before I talk about how Universal ran it, let me talk about how my good buddy Matt planned this flawlessly. No problems. Everything was super smooth, really fun. So kudos to you.
Thank you,
but
buddy.
On top of that, you have like the support staff of like Universal. Everyone's really helpful. Our guide was great. The people that work there are all fantastic. All the scare actors, super professional, really fun. And I think this is probably the best event of yet. Granted, it'll probably keep getting better and better, but this was like the pinnacle for me. I loved how we got to experience them without a group and just going into houses, choosing whatever the hell we wanted to do, and then having the structured tour. So it's like, it's the best of both worlds, and I think this was the most fun I've had. And I don't feel, and I'll be honest, I don't feel burned out at all. Maybe that second day, because we walked probably about over 10 miles between the 2 days,
we did.
I'd say.
We did 18,000 steps at least each night at the event, and I think it was 8 to 9 miles each time at the event. So we were definitely not minding all of the fucking junk we ate, and Mark and I ate some junk, though. We ate some fucking junk. We went to Toothsome's Chocolate Emporium, the Sweets Emporium, and we got these giant fucking mutant milkshakes, have fucking pieces of cake and shit. Cupcake. There was a full cupcake sitting on top of my fucking milkshake. We ate so much junk, dude. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because we were like in the Lord of the Rings. We never stopped walking. We were just fucking walking everywhere. Mark and I walked so goddamn much.
Are we in Mordor yet?
Yeah, it's like, Jesus H. I will echo everything Mark said.
HHN Christ.
I will echo what Mark said. I thought the event was ran amazingly well. The Universal team, Hollywood team, does a fucking phenomenal job. Flow of the park was great. I loved it. I think this was my favorite year yet. I had a blast. Always great to just hang out with you, brother. And I only get to see Mark once a year now. So we went from
once a week to
once a week.
Once a year.
Mark and I used to see a movie once a week. Now we see once a year. But I will just say, I do want to point one thing out. Overall event note. This was my first year ever seeing a fucking baby at HHN. And I was
when you
hey.
nudged me and I looked over and that's baby with the cap on, just
it was like a baby with the giant, the fucking cans you wear at a firing range, right? And that's very protective of the parent. But I will just say, hey, I normally don't.
As the baby's watching people getting
beheaded and shit. I think that I'm not usually a prude. I don't care if you bring your baby to a bar, but I'm sorry. Your baby does not belong at HHN. Please do not bring your fucking baby to if you bring your baby.
To be honest, it's a bit too violent. It's more of an adult thing, I feel.
Yeah, kids have, Mark and I were discussing this. Kids have 40 million events to go to a year. The adults have very few things left. Can you fucking kids just stay home? Can't we just have this? This is for us. Also, if you bring your baby to HHN, you're a piece of shit. I'm sorry, you are. You're a piece of shit if you bring your fucking newborn baby to HHN, you may need to rethink some things in your life, is what I'm saying.
It's the same as those parents that bring a baby to a horror film or their kids, and then the kids are just screaming.
I don't like that either. Basically, the moral of the story is leave your children in a cave. Don't bring them anywhere. Anywhere where they can ruin someone else's experience. Your baby needs to not be there. Your baby should be in your house
also,
or car.
It also felt so when Matt, I don't know if, I'm sure we talked about it in our last HHN trip when we went to Knott's, but when Matt and I went to Knott's, there were basically when you get to Knott's, there's a front entrance, and then there's those. As a recap, there's these bands of roving kids that can't get in, so they're looking for a chaperone, and it's super creepy.
Super
and they're just
sketch.
Basically going up to all the adults that are going, and
it's like when
terrible.
Did you ever ask, when you were 12 or 13, did you ever try to find somebody to buy you beer or something outside of a 7-Eleven? Yeah, you know what I mean? I was probably 12 or 13. You're trying to score beer, and you try to work up the courage to go. In this scenario, we were the adult. Children were walking up to us to try to get them into knots.
I felt so old.
Mark and I, we felt old, but I didn't even let that girl finish her nervous sentence. She's like, excuse me, sir. I was like, I'm not fucking interested. Because, like, I don't care what you have to say to me. I'm not interested in helping you.
Thing is, okay, so all those kids that do get in at knots, they're terrible. They're running around. They're like, they don't give a shit about bumping into like older people.
They're being dicks to scare actors. They're ruining the experience for other people. They're just generally being a nuisance. If you are under the age of 16, you're a dick. If you're a baby, fuck you. That's what I gotta say. Like, stay away. This is our event. Go to your fucking Mickey's Halloween party. Go to your fucking SeaWorld shit. Stay
it's like there's
away.
Minions shit everywhere.
Okay. Now let's talk about positive things. As we said, Mark and I are going to be ranking all of the houses or mazes. I don't say maze. I say house. All of the houses.
What are they? Are they?
People call them mazes.
Really mazes,
they call them mazes because you're doing little routes and you're coming around little switchbacks and stuff. I call them houses. They're houses.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
We were going to be rating all the houses as we do and rating all the scare zones. And what I'm going to do is, just from notes I've gotten from listeners over the years from these HHNs, some people like hearing these, but they don't know what the fuck we're talking about. So I'm going to do better. What I'm going to do this year is I'm going to actually read off the descriptions of what the houses are before we even get into rankings, so everybody understands what we're fucking talking about. And for me to do that, I am going to share my screen right now. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. The event has 8 houses. Hollywood has 8 houses and 1 tram. Excuse me. It's called the Terror Tram. And this year, by the way, the Terror Tram was called Enter the Blumhouse. And by the way, YouTube people, or if you're not listening or watching on YouTube, go watch on YouTube because you can see what I'm talking about. You can see the cool design of the tram. So the tram is the Hollywood tour tram that takes you around the park on the original like glamour trams that sort of roam around the park through the sound stages, through the sets. You can see all that stuff. And what they do for Halloween Horror Nights is they turn that into a haunted attraction where you're walking outside through different sort of mini houses. This year it was themed to Blumhouse. So we got to see all of the Blumhouse characters on the tram. We saw Megan. We saw the grabber from the Black Phone. The guy from Freaky that nobody can remember. The baby killer from Happy Death Day. I sound like the baby killer at the beginning of this episode. I'm like, fuck your baby. And we also saw some people from The Purge. This is what you encounter on the Terror Tram. We'll be talking about that too. We included the tram in our ranking. So I put it up there against every other house because that's the way it's presented. It's part of the event, so it's going in our rankings that way. Did you include it in your rankings?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So these were the houses this year. These are our big IP movie houses. Movie people, you're going to be psyched about this. We got to go through a house of a quiet place. Make a sound and you won't last long. Monstrous creatures will hunt you down as the world of the first 2 films comes to life. So they're not doing day 1. They're doing the first 2 movies. Jim from The Office on the fucking farm. Fucking Oppenheimer's on the farm too. Okay, so we got to go through those. We also got to go through Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which is a house adaptation of the movie that just came out. An ancient artifact has released a chilling new entity, Garaka. He'll stop you cold. Only the Ghostbusters can keep you from getting iced. Nice. Insidious The Further. That's based off the Insidious films. I think it's every Insidious movie they've managed to incorporate in this house.
Yeah.
It's called Insidious The Further. Enter the Further as demons try to ensnare you. The red-faced demon will lure you into his lair. Keyface will unlock your fears and more. This was an original for Hollywood. We should say they do not share this one with Orlando. We got exclusive The Weeknd Nightmare Trilogy. So The Weeknd had a haunted house a couple years ago that Mark and I got to see. And here he returns to the event with The Weeknd Nightmare Trilogy. The Weeknd returns at a new haunted house spawned from After Hours, Dawn FM, and a horrifying new tale. Get ensnared by the most iconic moments inspired by his music videos and live performances. Okay, more on that in a bit. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Legacy of Leatherface. So this is an IP house, but it's an original for Hollywood and an exclusive. Orlando did not get this one either. This was just us on the West Coast. This was a multiversal approach to Texas Chainsaw. Basically, it's an original story set in the Texas Chainsaw universe with every iteration of Leatherface. Every movie version of Leatherface was in the house. Leatherface and his cannibalistic kin will lure you into their gore-filled slaughterhouse, fall victim to a gruesome original story never seen on screen in honor of the 1974 movie's 50th anniversary. It didn't even occur to me while we were there, Mark. It was the 50th anniversary of Texas Chainsaw.
You know what? They also didn't make a big deal about it either.
They didn't.
There was nothing that said it was the 50th anniversary.
That's so true. They should have had a Leatherface with a giant 50 jersey run out to let you know. Okay, continuing. Universal Monsters, Eternal Bloodlines. Get caught in an epic battle as Saskia Van Helsing and the Bride of Frankenstein go up against Dracula's daughter and her monstrous mavens. This features music by Slash. A sequel to Hollywood's most popular house last year, Monstruos. This year, we get Monstruos 2, or Monstruos Dos, if you're down. Monstruos Dos, the nightmares of Latin America. Resist the infernal rider El Charro, or he'll take your soul. Don't turn your back on the devil dog El Cadejo, or you'll be lost forever. And you better behave, or the boogeyman El Cucuy will get you. Shout out to El Cucuy, Mark's favorite. And finally, guys, Dead Exposure Death Valley. Enter a top-secret government facility where an experiment to create super soldiers has gone horribly wrong, turning people into radioactive zombies. They escape just as you arrive. Okay, Mark. Everybody's got the plot.
Yes, sir.
Everybody listen to me talk for about 5 minutes. I figure we'll do zones after. I want to get to the houses. I've been so curious, dude. I worked on my rankings so hard, man. We'll count down.
Like doubting yourself a bit, or
no, not at all. I'm just so curious to see where you landed, because I kept teetering between like I know what Mark's number one is to like Mark could pick anything. I don't fucking know.
Wait, should I have you guess?
Maybe as we get closer to your number one, I'll guess. But
it'll be way easier.
Oh yeah, you know what? Oh, don't reveal it then. Don't reveal it.
I'm not going to say. I won't say a thing.
Let's guess each other's top houses. I'm going to say Mark's number one house this year was Insidious the Further. I think that's where I land on my prediction for Mark.
You know what's the funny thing? I don't really have a solid. Let me look through the list.
Where do you think I ended up at number one?
I'm going to guess Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Okay, interesting.
I think that'll be my guess.
All right, so there you go. So we're going to see who's right. I said Insidious for Mark.
I think I'm wrong, though.
Mark said Ghostbusters. We're going to count backwards from 9 with our least favorite house, Mark. And I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off because I have a feeling you and I might have the same number 9. You correct me if I'm wrong. This hurts me to say. It hurts me to say. Universal Monsters, Eternal Bloodlines was the worst house this year by far. It's my number 9. And I will say that people who know this show and know me and know us and follow this HHN series that we do, Universal Monsters are usually some of my favorite houses. I love the Universal Classic Monsters. I love what they do to revitalize this franchise, and the houses are always really cool, or they're beautiful sets, or they have these amazing creature designs and great scares. The actors are fierce. They come for you. I thought this year sucked. There's always one house out of every year that sucks, and unfortunately, this year it's the Universal Monster House. I thought it was
the one we were looking forward to most.
Yeah, I thought it was easily the weakest house. It was. What's your number 9? Was it your number 9?
Mine's the same. It's like, let's give people an example. So when you go through, Matt was talking about, like, the other thing too is, like, we had seen some of the previous versions of this, and they're awesome. Like, set design is cool. Like, that's the one where you had the mummy, the wolf man, right?
Yeah, that was Legends Collide.
The previous ones.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically, just so people can understand, like, so in that one, you know, you would get the entrance to the mummy's lair, and it actually felt like you were there. There's, like, a huge statue of Anubis that was fallen over. There's, like, you could see the wolf man crawling on the ceiling on the tent. And this one was just, like, really, like, my thing is, if you're going to do artwork and it's a period piece, try to replicate it so it's grounded in some sort of reality. This one looked like comic book art in black and white on a flat black wall. It was just like a placard with the story. And so much of the sets just felt like they ran out of time or they couldn't construct it. So you'd get some passageways that were cool, but for a majority of it was very blank and dull. The lighting wasn't there. There's not many effects. The first time we went through, the actors were barely there, so we missed the whole storyline. And unfortunately, Matt was there to be like, I think this probably happened in this section, so I could kind of get a feel for the story. It was only when we went through a second time that we got the storyline. But even so, the set design was so bad. And I mean, you're going for the house, so it's kind of like, and it had to go through all these approvals, so it's kind of strange that it looked that sparse.
Yeah,
and it was kind of
unfinished, I would say. It felt unfinished.
It almost
it felt like a first draft that nobody filled in. Nobody filled in, like, you couldn't follow a story. And there were also just things, I thought, unforgivable things. Like, we should say that, unfortunately, what sucks most about this house is that its location is in a legendary movie location.
Yes, yeah.
We set foot.
They amp you up, too.
Dude, with all this signage, you are approaching Soundstage 12. It's the legendary soundstage where the original Frankenstein, James Whale's Frankenstein was shot. The Bride of Frankenstein was shot there. Many other amazing movies, right? Dracula, but also more modern stuff. Jurassic Park, Scarface. Huge movies were shot here. And the birthplace of Universal Classic Horror was this soundstage. So as two movie nerds, it was amazing to be inside of this legendary place because you really feel it. You see the height of the soundstage. It's fucking huge. It feels like you're inside of the bones of a skyscraper. But then you go into, I was like getting all amped. I was like, wow, what crazy shit are we going to see? Like Gothic castles and shit. No, you walk in and it all felt so small. And that was, I think, the most hurtful part.
Even the walkthrough felt short too, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
it did.
The funny thing is you have like this void of darkness where you know they could have been building stuff. And then it's like, the other thing too is like, as you're walking in, you see these posters. There's also, as you go through the stage door, there's a giant Frankenstein's monster. And it's basically telling you like, this is where all these classics were born. So they amp you up. The entrance does look cool because it's kind of like a mausoleum entrance, right?
Yes.
And it does look, it's like, it feels as though, cool, we're going to go into some lair and wander around and it's going to be awesome. This one, it's like you go inside and you're like, oh, it looks as big as the entrance. It's just really tiny.
Right.
And the other thing too is like, I have to give it some bonus points because costume design was really good. The scare actors, when we did see them, the way they choreographed it worked well. There's someone gets shot with a crossbow. There's like a burning cross that lights up. And all those are really cool. But the thing is, the environment they're playing in is just like not believable. So it almost feels like you're watching like a bad play. And it kind of like, because they're not in the actual universe. It's supposed to be like a
porno movie.
Areas, and it's super
It felt like a cheap porno movie to me. Like, some of the sets were so cheap and sparse. I was like, is this a porn that we're shooting?
By the way, you know what? You know what would have been awesome, actually? Can you imagine if they did it so, like, this is what I would do if I were there. It would have been cool, because they're going after the classics, if they made it all look monochrome and, like, high contrast.
That would be amazing.
Lighting.
See, you're already thinking...
look black and white, so it looks like you just step into a black and white movie.
You're already thinking more high concept than the actual creatives did on this maze, Mark, because what they chose to do, instead of that cool thing that Mark just said, they chose to have this is the level of conceptual thinking. Let's have a moment where Dracula's daughter appears on the face of the moon. How will we realize this? By showing it on a shitty projection on like a 720p screen. Oh, do the edges of the screen look blended into the background and the shadows? You know, the easiest fucking thing in the world to do? No. It looks like when you're at your fucking dentist's office and they're broadcasting like fucking projecting something from somebody's computer onto the wall, like Bluey or some shit for the kids. And you could see that it's like a shape, like a square shape of a monitor. That's what it looked like. And it was super unfortunate.
The other thing too is like the monitor, that screen's brightness was so... They didn't try to like
Cranked.
dim it down to blend. Okay, this is why it bothers me too. It's because other houses, like the Weekend House, uses that same thing to replicate a high-rise apartment. So you have these big screens, and they do another cool thing with those screens where they're like, okay, if this is a window, the window frame will cover part of the screen, so it looks like you're looking through a window. This one was just like, there's one part where she transforms, and it's just a big monitor right at the end of the hallway.
Yes.
And there's nothing to set dress it. It's just a monitor on the wall. It looks so bad.
It looked really bad.
Like, if they maybe tried to create, like, you know, so it looks like you're looking through a castle window into some, like, garden area. They didn't even try to do that. Or, like, you know how, look at your background right now, how the windows are Gothic and they have, like, the lattice work? They did none of that. It was just a square, and you're supposed to believe that you're somehow in this like castle and there's just a square monitor there.
Yeah. Watch out for the 4-foot tall Dracula's daughter. Like it was ridiculous. Okay, well also to Mark's point too, it was just a very lo-fi, very rough, rushed execution of something that I think should have been epic and was primed and positioned to be epic. I will say our first run through the house, I did not like the storyline because I thought it was just, you couldn't follow it. But my first run through the house...
No, but the second, I would... Oh, sorry.
My first run through the house was the worst by far. As Mark said, we were missing scare actors. There are scares missing. It felt
empty.
Super empty. I will say, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. On the second run through of this house, those holes were all filled, and there were more actors than before, and you really did see the house. So I want to tell people, we did give this house a fair shake. We saw it in its full execution, and when those moments were filled in, it was actually really cool. Especially seeing, like, because one night, this is a perfect example, I want to talk about this. You're walking by this set piece with Saskia Van Helsing, where, spoiler alert, she's been beheaded. And there's nothing there. It was just like it was like a fucking beheaded corpse that was lifeless, just a dummy, okay? And I said to Mark, why didn't that scene have somebody, like a vampire, ripping the head off that character so we could at least get a scare or some big moment? Well, wouldn't you know it, that's what was supposed to be there. We were missing actors. So the second time we went through the house, we got to see that exact fucking thing that I said. I was like, you know what this house needs? It was like walking into a Subway being like, you know what this place needs? A fucking sandwich. Oh, look, we're in a Subway sandwich shop. We walked into that moment, and there was a fucking Dracula vampire, like a bride, ripping the head off the Van Helsing girl. And it was cool, but again, it almost felt like too little too late. And that's the kind of shit. It was like everything was working against this house.
Here's the thing, though. It's sort of like, if you look at it from the perspective of someone who can't, and go through multiple times because they couldn't spend the money on an express pass or something, it's a real disservice to that. Can you imagine waiting that long and you just get this like half-ass experience? And this, even with, say, for example, even with the actors gone, you should at least be given, because they're human, they have to take breaks, so of course they're not going to be there all the time. At least make the set look sumptuous so they can see the detail. Because there are some houses we went to that I won't mention just yet, but they may have had the same thing where the scare actors were just not there. But the set was at least detailed enough where you can be like, oh, okay, cool, I can see how this would function as a scare. And that's the kind of technical nerdy side where you're like, I can see how this functions and works as a scare.
Sure.
And I can actually... And maybe the person's not there, but look at all these cool set pieces that they have around that tell a story or make me feel like I'm in this environment. This one had none of that. It's like, if you miss the scare actors, there's really nothing to do other than like, I can't wait to get out of here.
There's nothing to do except look at the monitor on the wall. Woo. Hey, when's New York 1 gonna come on? That's what it felt like. It felt like being in the waiting room of your dentist. That's our number 9. No surprise there. Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines. It hurts me where I live to say it was easily the worst house that we saw.
I think you and I were even talking about it prior to the event, like how excited we are to see certain things because, the prior years, they're great. And then you're hoping for that same house to get bumped up for its sequel. And then it's like, oh, no. And like Matt says, it has so much history going into it, so you are really hyped. So when it finally disappoints you, it makes it even harder because you see the potential leading up to it, and the buildup is so good too.
Yes. All right. All right, we've dunked on it enough.
Yeah, we
to sever the bloodline, aim for the heart. I was also sick of hearing that. Mark, what's your number 8? I think maybe this is where we're going to start to deviate. We'll see. What's your number 8?
Mine's going to be, I apologize. I love Blumhouse, but that Terror Tram was a big disappointment to me. It was, like, here's for example, if you sat at the back of the Terror Tram, your experience stinks because the biggest part that happens is the beginning where you get rushed by all those iconic Blumhouse characters. But if you're sitting in the back, you miss it entirely, which unfortunately we were sitting in the back. So when it first happened, you just see everyone up ahead like, oh, and then meanwhile you're like, ah, shit, I missed it.
We moseyed into the party after it was over and there was just shit on the ground. We were like, oh, cool, and a surprise party.
I feel as though they did the same thing as like, because you're also going through iconic sets in this one too. You're going through like, the hotel set, which prior was Exterminators, and they set dress that beautiful. There's like people scaring you, coming like melted bodies coming out of like toxic barrels and like giant bugs and shit. This one was kind of like, it felt like they just were like, here's the meth heads with weapons, and you just walk through this thing, and there's like the character designs are just kind of boring, and I don't know, it felt really empty. And it felt like nothing was really interactive. It just felt like you were walking through some boring display case of like, here's our properties, aren't we cool? But they didn't know, there was like really no effort to scare anyone.
Yeah, same. Mark, my number 8 is also Terror Tram, Enter the Blumhouse. I'm right there with you, dude. So far, neck and neck. I agree with everything Mark said. It was funny, again, like Eternal Bloodlines. I'm so glad we went through multiple times because our first trip through the tram, like Mark said, we missed that big opening scene, which is the best part. But the second night, because we were on a fucking private tour, we got that up front just straight away, and it wound up being the best part of that. But essentially all you're doing, all I want to add, because I agree with everything Mark said, I won't repeat it, is it just felt like we were walking through a series of glorified like Instagram photo ops, and I don't like that. Like, I'm happy, especially on the RIP tour, right? They had like specific exclusive RIP tour photo ops for us. A couple of them were cool, like the Hollywood sign. You can see on our Instagram, Mark and I at the Hollywood sign, all bloodied and stuff. That was pretty cool. And I like Megan. I'm a Megan fan, so it was fun to get a selfie with Megan. But like, we've had the Psycho Norman Bates house. We've had that. We've seen the Purge people. We've seen them too much, in my opinion. And we got a special photo op with the Purge people. I would have rathered, I think maybe you even said this on our trip, Mark. I would have rathered have a specific RIP house that's just for us versus the photo ops, which kind of felt a little useless. They didn't feel like enough of an exclusive to justify, oh, well, here's this separate thing that you get with your RIP pass.
They had enough actors where they could have just, even if it's the shortest house ever, they could have taken all those actors, because Jupiter's Landing?
Jupiter's Claim,
sorry. Jupiter's Claim is, they've basically moved that entire set there, and we as RIP tour members got to go through it privately, and it's restricted from all the general audience. Instead of having these boxes where you can take photos and from the general audience there, I would say just move these people into Jupiter's Landing and turn that into some really short exclusive scare zone where you can take a photo. But essentially, when you went through Jupiter's Landing, there's like 2 actors there. It was bad. The lights go out, and it was like, it was like, bad. What a waste of a huge space.
The other thing, too, not to keep comparing it, but like last year, Exterminators Terror Tram, I loved as well. There was so much fun with like the theming and the bug people coming out from everywhere. Each zone, it felt never ending. It was so cool. Here, it was like, I think because you have so many fucking characters you have to get off a checklist, it felt like I was just getting bite-sized houses. Like, here's a Megan walkthrough that has 2 sets. Here's a Black Phone walkthrough that has 2 sets. Here's a Purge, for some reason, with more sets. Hey, look, we're walking by the War of the Worlds plane crash set. That's really cool. That's a beautiful piece. I just love walking by that thing no matter what it is. But the Exterminators used that to great effect with, like, all these different environmental actors, not just monsters, people, victims suffering. It added to the moment versus here's a fence through this. Here are some purge people. Like, it just felt disconnected, right? Had they had some purgers on the plane looking like they had taken the plane, that might have helped a little bit, but it all felt like, it just felt very, like, disorganized. Is it just me?
By the way, does it feel like the purge is just a cheap way of accomplishing things because it's essentially, it's contemporary, so there's no real need to, like, set dress outside.
Well, I also think, too, they can
all you just basically have is, like, people in masks just
they can just fill in holes. Like, that's all they do. They're like, oh, if we don't have enough Megans, just get a purge person. Oh, we don't have enough grabbers, just get a couple purge people. It feels like the fill-in.
Well, here's the thing, it's like that Megan thing, because it was like almost like dioramas of scenes from the movie.
I thought you were going to say diarrhea.
It is so disconnected from like the rest of it.
Yes.
That it's like you had all these scare actors that look like Megan. They all look very young and short too, so they can pull it off. But for some reason, it's like you could have used these actors in a house to have this character chase you around.
Yes.
And that's the problem. When it's a big open space, it doesn't feel as scary because it's like you can go anywhere. They should be trapping you into these claustrophobic spaces, even in the outside areas, which is what Exterminators did. And this one was just like, it was almost like an ad. It felt too much like an ad. It's like, watch these movies. Here's some scenes. Go see it.
Yes.
And then it's like, get away.
And by the way, we should also say, too, the most horrifying part was on the tram, they made me watch a trailer for Speak No Evil again. Even on my fucking vacation, I couldn't get away from James McAvoy or that fucking trailer.
Laughs.
I was like, the fucking irony. I can't even get away from this fucker on my trip, dude.
And they amp it up, too, like the guides there, like, and we have a new trailer for you to watch. And we're like, oh, new trailer.
Great. What's it going to be?
Movie that's like, and this is on the RIP tour van or truck, which is like its own separate thing from the tram. They take you in like a nicer bus and like, so you're expecting it to be some like, oh, it's going to be an exclusive look at some 2025 new horror film. And it was the film that's already out in theaters that Matt had seen like and been complaining about seeing that because we had seen that trailer
a bajillion fucking times. Yeah. It was just funny. It was just insult to injury. I was like, really? But I will say, I do want to compliment it. That opening scene was cool, where they all rush you at the beginning. That was cool. I thought the actors who, especially the actors in the open, did a great job. The actors who played Megan, the actors who played the killer from Freaky, they did some really cool shit. I think the Purge people are doing their best, but they're just... It's tough. You don't have much to work with. They give you a mask and like a random weapon. Like, I enjoyed the Purge people that had like movie presence. Like, oh, it's the one with the glowy mask or the guy with the bunny ear face versus the lazy Purge things, which were like, I was like, did you just create a generic Purge personality? Like, here's a construction worker. Remember that guy? I was like, why is there a construction worker here? It just felt weird. Anyway, yeah, there you go. Number 8, easily Terror Tram. All right, Mark, I'm going to reveal...
It feels like our bottom twos were pretty
lockstep so far, yeah. Here's where we may deviate. I don't know. I have a feeling maybe not. Number 7, I'll go first here on this one. Again, this hurts me where I live, but I have a little bit nicer things to say about this. If you listen to our episode last year, my favorite house was Monstruos 1. Unfortunately, this year, my pick for number 7 is Monstruos Dos, The Nightmares of Latin America. I liked it slightly more than Eternal Bloodlines and Terror Tram, simply because it's Monstruos. I like the format.
More like a Monstruos dump.
It's like a Monstruos number dos. I liked it better than those two because it at least has the horror angle where they're coming at you like... with the great creature design and the gory sets. That does a lot for me. But as a Monstrous fan, dude, they didn't bring it this year. It felt, especially coming on the heels of the first Monstruos, which felt so revolutionary and scary and awesome and had amazing creature design and sets and vibe and momentum. this just felt like a pale imitation. It felt like, hey, let's follow the exact same steps and we'll recycle new monsters in. So in this case, instead of the 3 you got last time, like the bird lady and this other guy, you're going to get a werewolf guy. You're going to get a fucking El Cucuy, the creepy guy with the long smile.
By the way, werewolf guy, Matt loves werewolves.
I love werewolves. El Cadejo, who looked pretty cool. Like, that's the thing. I think that's my negative. My negative is that, A, we had a shitty run through the first time, and this was another one that was redeemed with a second run through where they filled in those spots. But scare-wise, this had some weak scares. The thing that Monstruos 1 had was scares on scares. They came to fuck with you. They wanted to scare you. This was more just like, come through and look at this cool set. Come through and look at this cool creature puppet that we made. Hey, look, doesn't El Cucuy look cool? Like, I can only remember one scare from this house, and I can't remember any scares from the bottom 2. So that's why this sets this apart. I can remember one decent scare in this house happening to me. It was El Cadejo, the werewolf, got me. The first puppet that came through really got me, and I do remember that. And I appreciate that because I like werewolf stuff. But this just didn't do it for me. I think they should have waited a couple years before sequelizing something that was so good. I appreciated what we got, but it wasn't enough. So it's a big disappointment for me. Actually, I don't want to telegraph things, but later on we're going to give awards, and this might be in the running for my biggest disappointment of the year, even more so than Universal Monsters. What's your number 7, dude?
Man, isn't that crazy that the ones that you like the most are at the bottom?
We're at the fucking bottom this year.
That's crazy. You know what's funny, Matt? I guess this is why you and I are good friends. My number 7 is also Monstruos 2 for the same exact reasons. And actually, I would say that I like the costume design and I like the characters, but they didn't really sometimes the images of the characters that they had on the wall were more terrifying and cool looking than what we got. So basically you're walking through this, it just felt like, you know, the other thing too is they had so many moments to do cool things. One thing about this year that I was not a fan of is they didn't do much overhead stuff. And then Monstruos 2, the El Cucuy at the last part is just like this creature. So you look up and he's looking down, but it's not a scare actor or anything. It's just like there and solid. So it has no effect. I think it's like they had cool characters, but the house itself didn't lend to them scaring you properly. And some of the glowing eyes, they didn't turn off. So as you were going through, you kind of knew that something was coming at you. So it felt very much like they didn't get a chance to run it through a few times to see how it works.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, Matt, I can't even remember anything scary about that one. It was I just found myself looking at how cool the character design was.
Yeah, and I love the look. This guy,
was just like,
this guy here is El Charro, the guy with the sombrero, and I wanted to see more of him because I thought he looked awesome.
I saw him once,
dude. Yes, he only pops out one fucking time at the beginning. I was like, dude, he should have been all over this maze. He's not a big puppet. He's a guy in a suit. They could have had him pop out. Instead, we get a million El Cadejos and a bunch of El Cucuys.
El Pendejos?
El Pendejo. You know,
what would be funny? If it's because the sombrero is so big, so he couldn't move because it keeps falling off. So they're just like, how about you just stay in this one room?
We have one doorway that's wide enough for his giant sombrero, and it's this one.
It's long at the top.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect cutout of a man with a sombrero. That's how he fits through. It's a shame because El Charro is really cool. His story is really cool. He looks very cool. He's got a house. He's got a horse. He's a horseman. So they did some cool shit, but it's too little. It's not enough.
It's like they had the animatronics. They could totally had someone on a horse just bust out to scare the shit out of you.
Because there was a moment where you heard a horse come through, and I was waiting. I was like, are we going to do a scare with a dead horse, a decaying? Nope, that doesn't happen.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's like they have full-size vehicles in there. You could have put a partial horse in there. I mean, this is from Universal. They did Westerns. Then you got one of those horses in the back with stunt horse bodies or something.
Dude, it was just not nowhere near as good as Monstruos 1. I think that's the other thing. It's if you're going to try to do something so similar, you need to space that shit out. It should have been years before they came back with a Monstruos 2. It just feels uninspired, especially with what the final version of the house that we see. But like I said, I did like the character design. I got a good scare out of El Cadejo. I love El Charro. Bring that guy back. Put him in some more stuff.
The thing is, like, you know what's cool? They could have done something really... That's the sad part. It's like, you're in your brain, you're like... Because you've seen... we've watched all the other houses and countries that we probably won't get a chance to. So you can see what they're capable of. And it's sort of like, they could have just had it look like these characters came to some village and just slaughtered everyone. Yes. But it felt like there was not even any... You know how you could see bodies around, like, oh, this is the aftermath of what these people have been doing. There was not much of that stuff either. So
yeah, there was only one. That's a good call. There was only one victim moment in this house. It was a fake little kid puppet, like a dummy. It was like a little kid on a bed with like a bag of limbs, like kid limbs that clearly had been stuffed in a bag.
And then the bed shaked.
The bed was shaking. That was okay, but I agree with Mark. They're also in a house that has all monsters. We need to see them. We need to see the victims too. Because then it makes it a little more frightening. You need to see what they're
capable of.
Yes, yes.
Like, that guy has a big fucking mouth. There should be, like, bodies on the floor with, like, just huge chunks of flesh ripped out.
Totally. Or, like, giant dog craps from El Cadejo with, like, baby limbs in them.
You know what? I'll be honest, and you use the smell...
Dude, okay, I want to say, though, this house was the first haunted house I've ever been in. Sometimes they pump smells into these houses, and they're fucking awful. There are 2 this year that were awful. But this house had a good smell. It had, like, that chocolate cinnamon kind of smell, like, very, like, a Mexican kind of coffee. Like a churro, didn't it?
It's a churros.
Dude, it smelled a little like a Mexican chocolate, like a Mexican dulce chocolate. It smelled so good in there. There's, like, a run... with like a couple sections, I think, before you get to the doll graveyard in this house, that it smells like that, and it's fucking amazing. I was like, is this the first
no
nice
wonder you
smell?
Like that, like, chocolate covered bacon.
That's what
from going through that house.
It was talking right to me. Yeah, dude. All right, so far, if you're keeping track, people, Mark and I have had the same 9 through 7. Will this be where we deviate? Mark, here, why don't you take the first crack at number 6? What's your number 6?
I get the feeling that you and I might share this, and I kind of hope we do. It would be, for me, unfortunately, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I unfortunately, I didn't feel as though it'd be in the bottom half of my list, but when we went, we also experienced the same thing where, like, the scare actors were just, like, missing in certain sections. Probably it's a beautiful house, though. The atmosphere is amazing. It even has, like, it smells like a terrible slaughterhouse. It stinks. This house smells bad. Like, I kind of regretted going through it again because, like, oh, it fucking smells terrible.
It smelled like, but wait, what?
And it's just big tourists eating, like, burgers and, like,
well, that's what's funny. It dumps you. The exit of the Texas Chainsaw House dumps you into Leatherface's Barbecue, which is a real custom restaurant a pop-up restaurant they have set up for the event. And let me tell you, the last fucking thing I wanted to do after going through this house was eat fucking barbecue, because it smelled like old lard and bacon in that house.
I love barbecue, and that house made me lose my appetite. I would have gone, like, if you had suggested that barbecue place, I would have been down. Once we got through that house, I didn't want to see any meat.
No, especially, and it was purely the smell. I don't care about the gross sights that we saw. It was purely that rank ass slaughterhouse smell. It fucking ruined any chance we were never gonna eat at fucking Leatherface's Barbecue. It was fucking over. I want to reveal quickly.
The build up to it is nice too, because you have, like, the guy with the cow head looked awesome. Every Leatherface looked dope. If you got to see them, they looked awesome. Yes. And that was, like, one of my favorite experiences when we went through the second time.
If you got to see them. We never got to see all of them at once. I think there were always 2 or 3 Leatherfaces missing.
My favorite part was the second time we went through, and there were still people missing. And Matt turns to me and he goes, yeah, there's like no Leatherface here. And then that guy came from the front yard and ran right to our
Leatherface. I'm pretty sure he was the Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw 2. He came rushing through the trees, running full speed at me, like appeared out of nowhere with a chainsaw and scared the bejesus out of me.
The timing of that was perfect. That's what's kind of putting it ahead of like Monstruos 2 and stuff. Is
because there were at least fun scares.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, well, even when, for me, this one was a prime example of, okay, we didn't get to see the actors, but, you know, it feels like you're walking through the slaughterhouse. You're pushing, like,
it's
human
immersive.
Skins aside. Yeah. It's very, it's
immersive as shit. This was, I would say, out of all, so far the ones we've counted down, this is the first house that I would truly call immersive. You are in the Leatherface world. Oh, by the way, I should say, we are in lockstep still. My number 6 is Texas Chainsaw Legacy of Leatherface. So I'm going to jump in and tell you, I couldn't agree with
Didn't it feel
Mark
like it
more.
Also had like the color palette of those movies too?
Yes.
Like they did a really good job of
the scenic was beautiful.
I
want to say, like, I think top marks for the scenic and sets in this one. I thought atmosphere-wise, this is where I was like, all right, this is the magic of HHN, what they can do with a huge universal movie-level blockbuster budget. It feels immersive. It feels real. The environments feel great. And basically, this was the craziest part, and I said this to you while we walked through. It puts you, the human being, into the position of being cattle in a slaughterhouse. Like, even here are the pits where we run you through. Here's where we take the pelts. Here's where we process the meat. Like, it puts you in the POV of that defenseless animal while you see the different Leatherfaces come through, the different members of the Sawyer family come through. As a Texas Chainsaw fan, I thought it was cool. The only reason it's so low on this list, this is the first time I'm going to say this, is just simply because the other houses were better. It's not me knocking this house. I actually thought this house was fun. Unlike the other 3 we've mentioned, this one had fun scares. It actually scared us a lot. And there was...
Yeah.
We at least, both of us walked out with 2 or 3 good scares from this house each time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a good way to put it, too. It's sort of like, even though the actors aren't there, you still feel this sense of dread that something might happen.
100%.
So you're still in this fight or flight mode, which is cool. Whereas the other ones, because like the sets themselves have no menace to them, you're just walking through like, shit. But this one, even though I would say that both walkthroughs were pretty disappointing for this one, but because it just looks so good, it's almost impossible to put at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because you, like Matt was saying, you do feel like when you're going through those gates and you're going through that like cattle area, they're above you and they have like the cattle prods. You really feel like you're being funneled and you can feel the storyline. Whereas the other ones, you can't feel. The ones that we put at the bottom, you don't feel any storyline.
No,
at least
you
this
feel
one,
nothing.
you can get some sense of what's happening, what's going to occur to you. So I feel as though, like, maybe it sounds like we're crapping on it, but it's a
good house. It's a good house.
I'll put it this way: if we had a good walkthrough for both, this would probably be way up top. But unfortunately, I can't do that.
And that's the other thing too. As I said, like, the only reason this is so low is because there are 5 other houses, this year, that are superior, just on all fronts. And this house is good. Had this been this and these other houses, this would have been number 1, no question. But it's just, now we're getting into nitpicks and gripes because that's what separates it. Like, this is not, those other 3 are like walking into Matt Palumbo's home haunt. This Texas Chainsaw is where we separate the men from the boys, and it feels like a big major haunted attraction.
Yeah.
Look, I'm psyched. I would gladly have gone through this house again. That was my other sort of barometer for how I would rank a house. Do I want to go through it again? I can safely say I never need to set foot in Eternal Bloodlines again. Enter the Blumhouse Tram, I'm done. And Monstruos Dose, I was like, even the second time around through, I was like, I don't really care that much. But Texas, we went through twice, and I could have gone through a third time. So
I'll be honest, you know what? If we had the time, I would have kept going through it until we got a good experience, because you really want to, because I think that's why and maybe it sounds like we're pretentious asses, but the quality of the Texas Chainsaw House is so good that you have to judge the other ones by how well it's set up.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. And I like what you said, too. Even when you have a bad run or you're missing actors or there's holes or whatever, there's still this sense of palpable dread that something's going to happen. And that's the key for a haunted house like this, you know?
Also, the other houses like the Eternal Bloodlines, Monstruos 2, and the Terror Tram, it felt like they were like, they're soft punches. They're like holding back.
Yeah.
The Texas Chainsaw one does not hold punches. There's like dismembered children bodies. Like there's that one girl that's sitting on the top of that like table and like the torso's ripped up. There's some truly disturbing stuff where they push the envelope of what you as an audience member going through will feel comfortable with. Whereas the other ones, it's kind of like they almost feel like they're more PG. This one felt like hard R. You're going through this thing, you're going to see some disturbing shit, whether you get scared or not. The set will scare you because it's like you're seeing you're watching people get processed, they're melting. The other thing too is like, I have to put it lower too because part of it was broken.
Oh,
like
yes.
There are these two melted people in barrels that are supposed to shoot at you, and they weren't moving, and they're just there. I mean, they're still scary because it looks great, but you can tell there were some broken elements that they probably should have came back and fixed because both times we walked through, they were dead.
I will also say, too, I love Texas Chainsaw 2, so I love that I got that scare with the Texas Chainsaw 2 Leatherface. I spotted some other Leatherfaces, the newer ones, like the guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre I saw, the Do Your Thing Cuz, I saw that one. We saw the Leatherface guy from Leatherface 2017. The only one that I kept waiting to see, and I missed the scare both times, I don't think there was someone there, was that original guy who's supposed to slam the steel door shut. That famous thing where he slams the door. That was clearly supposed to be a moment, and both times it did not happen. And I was waiting.
Because the guy just wasn't there, right?
I think there was no Leatherface there. He was supposed to be the classic, original 1974 guy there at the steel door.
He was at the barbecue eating ribs.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm supposed to do something.
Oh, I accidentally brought my baby here. Whoops. Let me drop my baby off. Whoops. Hey, I have a stroller.
A child.
I have a stroller. Let's go to HHN. What a great idea. Leave your baby at home.
By the way, you'll know the event's over when you see a father with a double stroller pushing through a house.
And we're close.
You're
that's
like,
what I fear. We're close. You see one baby, that's how it starts. Oh, okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think they brought that baby through the Texas Chainsaw House?
I hope so, because then they'll never do that again.
They regret it instantly. A little bit of flesh got into my baby's mouth.
Okay, you know what I would say? Speaking of children, I would say that if you had kids, this is probably one of the most disturbing houses you could probably take them to.
Make your first stop Texas Chainsaw, the Legacy of Leatherface.
Yeah, so your children can see other children torn apart.
Mark, anything else on Leatherface? You ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
All right, here we go, people. Our top
Here's the
5.
difficult part.
This is where we separate the men from the boys. Real shit. These are going to be the differences between are so slight and subtle. All right, Mark. Top 5. I'm going to let you take this one. What's your number 5? I'm so curious.
Okay, like I said, these were all tough for me. I think I reshuffled these multiple times. So just because it's going to be 4 and 5 doesn't mean they stink. It's just that I had to put them somewhere. So for me, number 5 is going to be A Quiet Place. I didn't get the good scares that Matt got or the person behind me. I was kind of in this buffer zone of no scares. But it was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, beautiful set. Animatronics were spot on, like Hollywood quality level. I mean, it looked like those creatures. There were a couple. There's one that was in the silo. There's one in the comms room, and they're out in the open. They're not hiding them at all. You see the full body, and it lunges towards you, and it looks real. The teeth look like they're glistening with saliva. It feels like you're in the movie for certain scenes, and I thought it was probably one of the best looking houses as well.
Interesting. All right. I won't comment yet because it's not my number 5.
Oh.
This is where we deviated finally. My number 5.
Did I say anything else, or?
You could say whatever you want.
I guess that's about it. I thought it was really good. I just, unfortunately, it's like I had bad timing. It's just like shit happens. And,
yes, it's just one of those. Sometimes you have a house with bad timing where you get a bad run.
Yeah. But it felt very immersive, like the sound design when you're walking through the forest, you can hear things cracking. So you're always under the expectation that something is going to come after you. So that was like, to me, it gave it a little bit of a bump over Texas Chainsaw Massacre because, it played with different areas and you were really going through multiple environments and they did it so well.
Okay.
But that's my number 5.
All right, I'm not going to say anything yet on that one because my number 5 is the Weekend Nightmare Trilogy. And again, I want to preface with the fact that it's at number 5 does not mean it's a bad house. I'm here to tell you, and I will be the first person to admit this, I was ready to hate on this house because I did not like the first Weekend house. I thought the first Weekend house was a sham of a mixed bag.
I think we both disliked it.
Yeah, it was like a mixed bag of random ideas that didn't work for me. This year, I'm here to tell you the Weekend Nightmare Trilogy is a good fucking house. It's one of the best houses at the event. I am not a huge Weekend fan. I like his music. I just don't know his albums and songs. I didn't dig into them to do research. But I didn't need to. And that's why this is better than the first house. Because there are still enough scares and atmosphere here to make it a worthwhile experience without you needing to have done all this homework. If you want to talk about body horror, this is a body horror house, which is very interesting because a lot of it has to do with mutilating the Weekend's body in different ways, which seems to be a theme with him.
Kudos to him for doing that, by the way.
Yes, for not having any fucking, basically not beholding to any kind of image. He's able to have fun with himself and mutilate himself. What I loved about this house as my number 5 was I was surprised. Again, my expectations were on the floor for this. I thought it was going to suck, and I was so taken in by the way it looked, the design of the scares, and especially the design of the characters in the maze. It had really unique, almost kind of like Panos Cosmatos Beyond the Black Rainbow kind of looking here are some hooded priestly figures. Here's the Weekend with bulging eyes. Here are surgeons. Here are surgical people. Here are bugs. There's a scene that I can't get out of my head. 2 scenes. One is there's a scene where you walk through an apartment. Mark was talking about it earlier, where you're in a high-rise, and there's a weird-looking person there looking through a telescope. And when you see the person's face, you see that they are like a kind of not a Cthulhu. It's like a Lovecraftian kind of face where there's multiple eyes where there shouldn't be, or it looks like they kind of phased in and out of a dimension and they kind of got glued that way. It's very gnarly looking. It was shocking, but more so the feeling in that room was they don't even have to come at me. I'm scared. I don't want to be here. It felt like a true nightmare. There was another room that was all mirrored glass. Mark was getting confused. He didn't know where to go. And this scare didn't even happen to me, but I enjoyed watching him get this scare. The thing I remember from this house, Mark walking through the mirror room, he doesn't fucking know where to go. And this guy in white robes with no face just came out and scared the bejesus out of Mark. It was so funny. Fucking great. There were just so many inspired, fresh creature designs in it, especially towards the end once you see the big mega thing that's being created. I don't know the exact story of this house, but I don't need to. It feels like a bad nightmare, like a fever dream, disgusting things that your brain is trying to process. It felt like we were in another world. It didn't feel like we were in a haunted house with costumed characters. I felt like I was in a bad dream, and I really dug that vibe. For me, it's number 5, and the only reason it's number 5 is because I just love the other 4 houses so much, but I want to just say that I loved the Weekend Nightmare Trilogy. I thought it was great.
Nice. I have a feeling... wait, what's your next one, actually?
What's my number 4?
Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is A Quiet Place. Is my number 4. So, here's my deal. As Mark said, I got all of the scares in the Quiet Place house that Mark didn't get, and I got them both times. I don't know why, but I had such a positive experience in the house both times. I think this house it works on a certain kind of person, and that is, do you like giant puppets? And for me, the answer is yes. And if that answer is yes for you, this might be your favorite house of the whole event.
They're everywhere.
They're
right?
everywhere. They did not hold back.
Most.
Like movie quality puppets, like huge. The Death Angels that come in, they are huge. They're fucking everywhere. It doesn't matter. Unlike the Monstruos Dos house, where like, oh, the eye lights are still on, I can tell something's coming. Here, you knew a Death Angel was going to pop up, but it didn't matter. Because when it did, it was still so terrifying because of the sheer size.
It's so jarring.
Yes, or the way the scares telegraphed. Like, when you walk past the set of the scenic of the torn open Metro North train, like, you knew something was going to pop out because you had to walk by it and it was getting too quiet. But it was so fucking cool to see it come out and it would scare the shit out of you.
By the way, that strobe effect, too, in combination with how good the makeup is, or the animatronics look, it kind of blended everything really well.
Super well.
It's kind of felt like you were really... by the way, they don't try... This is not one of those mazes where they try to, like, hide things. It's kind of cool because it's like they're very much in the open. And
yes.
And you do feel like you're trying to quietly sneak around them.
Well, that's the other cool part is... To bring the immersion to that next level, all of the actors are all doing the ASL thing. They're all being quiet. They're trying to tell you to be quiet. The scare actors, the only ones...
location?
Yeah, the only things that the only time they're making noise, that threw me off when you said that. I was like, what? The only time they're making noise is when, like, it's the guy screaming or somebody charging, like... Other times they're doing sign language. They're trying to communicate with each other. It's really cool. Like, kudos to them for going the whole extra mile to make sure the whole house is treated that way. Because I think by design, you're not supposed to make noise in the house. I think even when you get scared, you're supposed to keep moving quietly to keep the secrecy of the quiet of the house so the monsters don't come. But I just love that concept, and I love the commitment to that. It was just scare after
like
scare. The scenic was amazing.
Almost.
It is like a reverse house. But it's not just filled with great scares. Like, this is one where I could have just walked through each of the scenes and been happy to look at, like, the sets and how incredible they looked. There's a thing that HHN does called behind the scares, or behind the unmasking the horror, I think it's called, where you could see behind the scenes with all the lights on how each house is done. And this would have been the one house. I normally don't go for that, but this would have been the one house I would have wanted to do that with, because I was just so impressed with the production value. It really felt like you were walking through a movie set. It felt like a movie.
Well, for me, I try not to look at those behind the scenes ones because it's sort of like
you don't want to ruin the magic. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm usually the same way.
I'm curious how they do stuff, though. You know what I mean?
I'm the same way, but with this house, I would break that rule because I would have wanted to see how intricate. Because there's a moment too, like, remember in the first movie when the fucking basement floods and the fucking the baby's floating up, right? Like, there's a bit where there's a Death Angel and it looks like it's in a floating basement. Like, the flood waters are coming in, and I was like,
you can see the reflection of the creature in it.
Yes. You're like, how the fuck did they do that? And it looks so real. Like, we walked through it. I don't know. This house was a home run for me. It's, again, only in fourth place because there were 3 other houses I kept wanting to go through more.
Yeah.
Mark, what's your number 4?
Well, here's where we're sort of similar, because I think mine is actually the Weekend Nightmare.
It is
Trilogy.
the Weekend. All right, yeah.
And I have to say, it's definitely a huge improvement over the previous one, which to me felt like they were just taking the best parts of other houses and just like kind of combining it into a lesser quality version. But this one felt like Matt says, it feels like a fever dream. It almost feels like you're going through a fun house. This was the most disorienting house for me, which I loved. They had every passageway leading to, it wasn't just curtains. It was like this bright spotlight with a bit of like haze. So when you're walking toward it, you have no clue. Do I go left? Do I go right? And it threw me off, and it just made it more uncomfortable in a good way. Yeah. And you never knew what you were going to expect to go around the corner. And I think it was a brilliant way of doing that, because sometimes when you go through the curtain, you can see the crack through, you can see what other people are doing. But because this is kind of like blinding you, when you go around the corner and you get frightened, it's way more effective because you're kind of like it's almost like it's designed to mess with your sensory perception.
Yeah.
So when you do run into something, you're not expecting it all because you're still squinting from the bright light that was in your face. You know, the mirrors are throwing it off, so you don't know which direction you really should be going. It was actually a really good house. And like Matt said, it's only down here because the other ones that we chose are way better. But it's a phenomenal one. The entrance, everything about this house was done perfectly. Yeah, the facade.
We didn't even talk. The facade looks amazing. And after being outside during the horrible heat wave, how nice did that being in that facade feel?
Oh god, yeah, that felt.
It was
great.
like it was literally the coolest, most air conditioned part of the whole event.
It was literally the coolest. But here's the thing: it's like in which one was it? In Universal Monsters, right? They didn't take the time to make this studio space feel big, whereas the Weekend House, from beginning to end, it felt like they put a lot of love and care into it.
Yeah.
Like all the sets look beautiful. There's nothing was really telegraphed because, you know, sometimes you'll see like a painting on the wall and you're like, oh, someone's going to pop open from that. Or like there was a bathroom mirror and some dude just popped out of it and scared the shit out of all the people standing next to it. But it didn't have any sort of thing where you're like, okay, I can see where it can open up, or, you know, there's like always some small gap or it's like slightly skewed. This one was done. The attention to detail was perfect. They even had like one of the scare actors is supposed to have arms removed and they come off the wall and you can see all the arms still attached. Like it had like, I would say it was almost on the level of The Thing when you had those like split open creatures. The creature design for it, and it's just like basically mutilating the Weekend. But the sheer variety they had, it never felt like you were looking at the same thing twice. It was really good, and kudos to them for like improving it, because I went from like hating it last year to almost this. At the beginning of our trip, I think this was at the top of our list. That's how good it was.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Especially
after
that
first
first
coming
night.
Up are way better, but it's not because this one stunk. It's like they're so you'll see what you mean, but they're so different. And it essentially, for my top four, I could probably put them all in one line parallel and be like, I'm perfectly fine with them occupying one space, because it was super difficult for me to choose these top four, because I just even like an hour before the show, I changed some things around, but it's only because it's like it's really tough. So you'll see in a moment. So what we're on now? 3?
3, our top 3, dude. So we should say there are only 3 houses left, and I would say no matter what order we have these in, these are I will fucking go to bat and tell you these are the 3 best houses at HHN 24. There is no question about it. I think like these are the houses that we went through 3 or 4 times each of these, and I would happily go through them 3 or 4 more times.
I'll go so far as say is that these 3 houses are so good, they're even the top 3 from our previous years. Like, these ones were really high up.
Yeah, these were really high. I mean, there are some Orlando houses I'd put at the very top.
Yeah, but for LA, I'm talking about.
For LA,
it's hard to compare it to Orlando, mainly because they really play with space.
Yeah,
and they have like this big epic feel, but when it comes to our West Coast experience, these 3 houses are so good they could be the top of the other years that we've been.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
they really
I think
push the envelope on these.
That's fair to say. All right, well, I went first last time. Mark, what's your number 3?
Okay, I'm gonna go with Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. It was a blast. It's probably, to me, if we were to say, like, what's the most fun house you went through? This one, Matt and we went through a couple times. We kept getting sprayed by Slimer. There's so many interactive elements where you just be like, gross! Like, you get a real physical, reaction to things in this. It was super fun. They did an amazing job of recreating. I watched the movie, fortunately, previous to this, so I thought they did a really great job of, like, telling the story in a short time. And, like, what's the name of the creature again?
Garaka.
Garaka looked amazing. There's 2 sections that it's hanging out in. and it comes around a corner from one of the buildings, and it scares the shit out of you because the guy is amazing. He's super tall. And then when you go in, he'll come back around and scare shit at you twice. So it was like, I think I laughed, but also had good scares. And I could keep going through this house because every time we went through, it was super fun. Different things happened. It always felt populated. It never felt underwhelming. And it's a solid 3 for me, but it was number 1 for me. But like I said, I kept changing my order.
Shuffling.
But I just remembered, I think many years from now, I will always remember Matt and I just going through this house, getting squirted on by Slimer's sludge.
It sounds so bad.
Multiple times.
Getting fucking squirted on and dumped on and nutted on by Slimer.
The word squirt's disgusting now. It's kind of hit the moist territory. Okay, when you get sprayed by water, but there's multiple locations where Slimer pops up, and I think was it our first one through where we kept getting hit. But anyway,
you did. You got hit every time. Mark got every time there was any water effect. Mark got hit. My number 3. Okay, so there you go. Mark's number 3 was Ghostbusters. My number 3. Let me get this teed up here. Is gonna be Insidious the Further. At one time, to echo what Mark said, I had this at the top of my list. It only worked down to 3 because the other 2 houses, it just narrowly beat it in the fun category. I want to just say this, though. This is the best praise that I can heap on this house. This is a house that there is no bad run-through. There's never a bad run-through because it is so completely stocked with scare actors. And those scare actors are the most relentless, fierce scare actors at the event, that if your desire is just to simply get scared in a haunted house, this house will give that to you. I think it might be, for me, I won't speak for Mark, but I think it is the scariest HHN house I've ever been in terms of just the intensity of the scares, the propulsion of the scares, like the amount of scares. I'm talking like, usually we get triple scares in a house where one actor gets you, another guy blindsides you, another guy's waiting for you. This is the first time I think where I've had like a sextuple scare where it's been like 6 actors in a row just fucking coming at me crazy. Here's the crazy thing.
You run a gauntlet.
You do. The Insidious the Further House puts you on a gauntlet at the end where you have no choice but to get through like 6 of these scares, and they're within seconds of each other, and they get everybody. The creature designs are disturbing.
You can't go unscathed at the end.
No, you will not have a bad run of this house. The red-faced demon's giant pubes will haunt me forever. He has the worst merkin I've ever seen. If you don't know what a merkin is, Google it. The red-faced demon, there's a bit where he's standing with his pubes out, and it is the most horrific shit I've ever seen. I had a blast in this house. This was a house that it's right next door to Ghostbusters. So Mark and I, we had such a blast in Insidious and Ghostbusters, we literally left and went through them again because they're right next door to each other. And that was my
probably
first
the
sign.
Most fun experience ever.
Yeah, that was my
hitting both of those houses.
Just look back and forth, back and forth. That was my first sign. I was like, we are experiencing the best houses at this event. There is no question.
That's the house that you go through and you're like clapping each other in the back, and you're like,
yes, we made it. Exactly. That's your we made it house. Is Insidious the Further. Even the lesser known demons like Keyface or whatever that weird hospital one was, the lady.
Remember when you were like, it was like, I should have known there was a painting.
Yes, there's a part where it's like you should have just known the painting was a fucking setup, and I still like an idiot went towards it and something popped out and scared the bejesus out of me. I will say this too. This house has the grossest smell I've ever had in an HHN house.
Dude.
It don't smell like it don't smell like fucking churros in this house. You know what it smells like? Vomit. There's a room that smells like barf. The fucking chemists at Universal Studios managed to distill a barf smell And there's an even worse part where you walk through the scene, it smells like barf, someone's vomiting, and then a dummy comes out who has barf all over his chin, and he sprays you, and in this case, Mark somehow missed it. He got every other spray and every other thing, and the barf guy barfed on me. He barfed all the fuck over me. It was disgusting. It was the first time at the event I was like, I have to run to the hotel and take a shower.
By the way, that section is so gross because it's
gross.
Not like the dummy. It's not like when you think dummy, you're like, it just looks. This looked like a person fully dressed in clothes with like chunky vomit going down the front. It's disgusting.
It was
and
horrible.
In combination with seeing that person like throwing up on the toilet, and then you go through and there's that person to your right.
Oh
and then
God. I can still see the
pungent.
dummy with the chunky vomit on its. I could still see it. Like, so if I close my eyes, I could see him perfectly. It's fucking horrid.
It's like I'm never having pea soup again.
Congratulations to the creative team of the Insidious house. I think this might be the scariest HHN house I've personally ever been in. Yeah, I loved it. Mark, what's your number 2?
Oh shit! Wow, we're getting close. All right, number 2 is going to be, man, this is where I really struggled. And I'm second-guessing myself, but you know what? I put it down this way, so I'm just going to do it anyway. This is probably one of my favorite houses because it has, to me, one of the coolest sets. It's Dead Exposure, Death Valley.
Yep.
That house was amazing. Everything in it was like, basically, you're going into this facility and then you go down. It felt very Resident Evil, but when you're getting there, it's almost like, you get 28 days later elements. There's like the monkeys they're experimenting on. One is in a cage and it's got like the sharp teeth. You can see they're starting to transform. And then you see they go from like experimenting on animals to humans. You see these children that are just like in these plastic cocoon bags on these tables, and they're just kind of in a fetal position and they're hooked up with wires. And it's just so immersive and you feel like the story. And I love movies where you're going through some sort of like science facility or like where they're like, they're working on something nefarious and you get to see like the glowing jars. There's barrels of bodies and they're semi-transparent and you just see kind of the heads. The scare actors are so good because they know how to act frozen. There's one section of this where it's just those barrels of bodies and some of them are sticking out. Every time I went through, I couldn't tell which one was the scare actor and he got me every time. There's like a giant gorilla there that's like
the best.
Playing with like intestines
it's
and
the
its
best.
brains exposed. It's huge. The person playing it does it perfectly. Overall, it's one of the most cohesive ones. I like the fact that it's an original IP too, so it's not really based on anything. So you don't know what to expect. Every room we went through, you didn't know what to experience. When you go through the cooler room, the AC is blasting. There's like these bodies hanging in these plastic bags, these clear plastic bags with like frost on them. The level of detail was amazing, and it's like you really felt like you were going deeper and deeper into this facility where everything was going wrong. And then at the end, this group of zombies comes out, and then they spray you. And then Matt and I got hit as soon as we were walking out. This one, every walkthrough I had, super enjoyable, lots to look at. Fortunately, another good thing about it being like not really a big monster movie, it wasn't as crowded. So you don't get this conga line effect that you do when you're going through The Weekend or Texas Chainsaw or some of these more known IPs. So it felt like you had a good distance between the people in front and behind you, so you can get some really good scares. You can still observe the environment around you, and it was just like, it was gorgeous. The opening to it was awesome. There's like a zombie in a security booth. That guy was like totally in character, scared the shit out of everyone that came in. It was really good. Like, that was perhaps, like I said, I'm sorry to put it at number 2 because it easily could be number 1, but it was one of my favorite walkthroughs, and I'm glad we got to experience it a few times.
Well, Mark, it's also my number 2, Dead Exposure, Death Valley. So we met here at number 2.
Nice. We finally got...
We're back. We're back. It's Kismet.
Synergy.
I loved this house. echo everything that Mark said. The MVP of this house was the gorilla. You guys know I love giant apes. I love people in big rubber monster suits. We only missed the gorilla once. All the other times, thankfully, he was in those. We had, even when he wasn't there, we still had dynamite runs every fucking time we were in this house. It's just a fun. That's what it is, and this is totally subjective. All these are subjective, but it's so fun. This is, to me, the most fun environment to be in. Because, like Mark said, you don't know what's coming, but it's also just an aesthetically fun environment. You've got glowing toxic waste barrels. You've got people in the hazmat suits. You've got the variety of locations. Oh, we're in a lab. Oh, fuck, we're in a quarantine zone. Oh, shit, we're in a cool room. Like, it was just one insane set after another with those hyper glowing neon green lights, and it made me feel like almost like you're in Batman Forever, kind of like Joel Schumacher, like super bright candy colors, like so awesome. The zombie effects, I have to give it to all the scare actors who were fucking amazing, especially the guy who played the melting man. There's this guy whose face looked like it had completely, I'm talking like the Incredible Melting Man. Underneath his hazmat visor, you could just see this melted, disgusting face with these eyes bulging out, and he would slam against that fucking glass so hard, and he would get us
twice
every time. The creature design in this, like I said, is amazing. I want like a Melted Man action figure. I want a gorilla action figure. This just felt like the equivalent of being in, like, you know, those like cool, crazy Goosebumps book covers, like they're all neon and crazy. The art. That's what this house felt like being inside of, but with a sort of toxic waste zombie theme. The scares were all there. Mark and I, this is how I knew this house was going to be at the top of my list. Mark and I laughed like idiots from the time we entered this house to the time we left. And then when we would get out, we would just be laughing about the shit that happened, and we would be like, we have to go back. We have to go back and do Dead Exposure because it was just so goddamn fun.
I'm so happy we did too.
My number one just edges it out for a super simple reason, but I got to give it to Dead Exposure. At one time, like I was literally making my list on the plane, this was at my number one slot for a really long time.
Oh wow!
And I replaced it yesterday.
So.
Here we go, Mark. Number one. I think if you've been keeping track at home, you know where we both landed. Mark, you guessed Ghostbusters for me, and you were right. And I guessed I guessed Insidious for you, and I was right.
And you were totally right. We do know each other.
We know each other. We know each other well. Mark, please tell the people.
You just mentioned. Oh wait, no. You have to do it because you have a perfect transition. You said there was one thing that put it over the edge, so now you have to tell us.
The one thing that put it over the edge is simple. And that is, I have a giant crush on Dan Aykroyd. No, it's that I fucking love Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is my shit. I'm a lifelong Ghostbusters fan. I grew up with the movies. I grew up with the real Ghostbusters animated series, the video games, the toys. I was a Ghostbusters kid. It's just guys of my age. That was our childhood. So I had the privilege now of going through both Ghostbusters houses. Mark and I's first year at HHN 2019, the maximum screamage year, was the first year they had a Ghostbusters house, and that was for the original movie. And I got to go through that, and that year, that would have been my favorite house, simply because it's a Ghostbusters house. And here, I don't have a better reason for you. I'm a Ghostbusters fan. To be able to walk through a real-life, immersive Ghostbusters house, it was like a treat. Like, I don't want to get sentimental, but it truly, it touched me. It touched me inappropriately. It touched me deep, man. It touched me deep. Like it was very cool to get to experience that. And to top it off, the house is it's a blast. Every room has great scares. If you're looking for things, there's iconography you recognize from the new movie, but there's iconography from across the franchise. The mini puffs are everywhere, causing little bits of chaos in different rooms. The masks for the creatures and the ghosts look great. The Scolari brothers,
accurate too.
They're super screen accurate. The lighting is fun. I guess that was my main theme, is like just like the crazy lighting effects and sort of otherworldly, like hyper stylized comic book look of Dead Exposure. You could easily put over here to Ghostbusters, because their strobe lights for scares weren't just like the regular like cold white light. It was like red and blue, red and blue. It was like they were all multicolored, crazy. It felt like you were in a live action cartoon. Garaka, as Mark said earlier, looked amazing. That scare actor on the stilts with the glowing blue eyes. Dude, there was a part that fucking totally caught me off guard when you're walking through and you see the facade of the frozen over Ghostbusters firehouse.
Yeah.
And it's a misdirect. It's just this beautiful moment. You're supposed to be looking up at the firehouse as Garaka comes out from the side to scare you. It was just gorgeous. Like, so fun. There was even a little Vigo the Carpathian in there.
Spikes coming off of it too.
Yeah, the icicles. There's even a little Vigo the Carpathian in there for Ghostbuster 2 fans. It was really fun. I finally got the Vigo scare.
That guy got me.
Yep, I went through a couple times. I missed Vigo. I finally got him on the last run, so I was excited to see him. It's a treat, dude. There's a full-on Ecto-1 inside of the house that bursts through the wall. They do a fucking jump scare with the Ecto-1. Does it work? Not really. Is it awesome? Yes. It's awesome.
It's kind of like, if you're thinking of fan service, it's perfect.
Yeah. That's exactly right, dude.
Fan, and anything you could want if you were a fan, they hit it perfectly.
Yeah. This is a fan service house. If you're a Ghostbusters fan, this is going to be your favorite house. I'm bummed I never got to try the Stay Puft s'more treat, only because that line was always way the fuck too long, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to burn an hour of my HHN experience to get a fucking s'more. I've had a s'more. They're delicious.
We did have two very funny line experiences where we got in line, got to the front, and then
bailed. We were just like, it's too hot for this bullshit. Who cares?
We ditched everything. This was the year of ditching things. We ditched our
poor tour guide. We Irish goodbyed that motherfucker. I feel so bad for him.
He was our like best tour guide, by so shout out to Billy F.
Shout out to Billy. He was great. He was great. We didn't mean to Irish goodbye you, dude. There was just no good time for us to say goodbye. You took off. I wasn't going to follow you into the Purge Theater. I was ready to leave. I don't know what to do. Anyway, that's my number one house of the year, 2024, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Mark?
That is a solid choice, sir.
Your
of course,
number
everyone
one.
knows mine's going to be Insidious, and I only chose it just because I would say this is almost the perfect house. It's got everything. Set design's great. Story, awesome. Creature design, fantastic. They actually have a build-up with an amazing climax at the end. And it's like Matt said, you feel like you're going through this gauntlet of demons. They'll get you one way or the other. And it's like it never felt unpopulated. It's like every room served a function. It looked great. It felt like you were in the movies. So if you're a fan of the franchise, it's very much, I'd say it's very similar to Ghostbusters for Matt. If you love this franchise, you will feel like you're there. You will be terrified. You don't know what to expect either. You just don't, because all the other houses, maybe if the Onslaught, maybe you'd get like 2 scares or 3. This one is like, you're getting at least 4.
Yeah, I would say even more. I don't think they miss anybody at the end. I think that gauntlet, as you call it, the demon gauntlet, it's a great name for it. I think they get everybody. I don't think one person gets through with like, oh, I missed that one person. No, they're fucking They're all coming for you. Yeah.
I would say if you were to, I guess the reason why I rank it number 1 is if I were to give someone advice, if they had limited time and they just wanted to have a guaranteed good experience, it has to be Insidious. The other ones just felt like there could be another variable where you may miss things. This one was just like, you're guaranteed a good time. If you're coming for scares, this is the house to go to. Even if you don't like Insidious, you'll probably still be terrified.
Oh,
so I thought it was a great entry for the event. It started us off to a degree. So it was a great way to begin and end it. And I thought it was like, I don't know, it's just a blast. And it's your adrenaline, for me, my adrenaline rush going through this house was at the top.
Yeah, easily. I think in terms of adrenaline, it was Insidious, Texas, and The Weeknd. I think those were the 3 that got my adrenaline like to the top each time.
Yeah. And
I can't believe I'm saying that about Weeknd,
like
but
the 3 best houses, I think, in terms of set design.
Set design and scares, I think. Because I think what you said earlier was like, that's like really right on the money. Like, even if nothing's happening, you still feel like something is about to happen. Like, that's a big fucking deal. So there you go. Mark's number one house, Insidious The Further. Dude, amazing.
That was crazy. Right. I can't believe we went through all those. It seems like when you talk about it, that's a lot going on. And this was probably, I would say, one of the hardest years for me to choose which would wind up. I mean, and I'm not even just talking about top 3. I'm talking about like,
I would say top 7 through 1.
Yeah.
Was really me trying to, or 6 through 1 was really me trying to figure out, like, okay.
Yeah.
It's really just, we're splitting hairs here about, like, I prefer this. Oh, I'm a Ghostbuster fan. I like this. Like, you know, you're really just nitpicking shit at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It comes down to, like, really small things.
Before we do zones, since we're talking about houses, I want to do some awards really quick.
Okay.
I'll start low and I'll go high. Mark, biggest disappointment for you? Biggest disappointment this year? Which was?
I think we share the same one. It's probably going to be Universal Monsters, Eternal Bloodlines for me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's really the best answer you got. I would also maybe two-way tie with Monstruos Dos in terms of hype. Yeah. I was hyped coming in, and boy, they dropped the ball on that one. That was hard.
This one to me was just too clear to have some of my other ones have honorable mentions, but this one was just, it was just definitely bottom of the barrel. So it was easy to just throw it down there. I think we did it like the first day. We're like, this one's at the bottom.
Yep. And it was very clear throughout the event, both nights, that it was the bottom.
Yeah.
Mark, biggest surprise for you? What was the biggest surprise?
I'm going to go with the Weekend Nightmare Trilogy. I love that one. I wasn't expecting much from the first time. They totally redeemed themselves. Kudos to the Weekend and Universal for making this like one of the most fun houses to go through.
I would agree with Mark. I will echo what Mark said. The Weekend Nightmare Trilogy was my biggest house surprise. My biggest surprise overall at the event was seeing a fucking baby. I was truly shocked and surprised, and not in a good way. That was my biggest surprise. Mark, let's go for a hard one.
Oh, okay.
Favorite character design or favorite creature? You can only pick one.
I'm going to go. Okay, so I'm trying to be like,
you're going diplomatic. Yep.
But you know what? I'm going to go with, I just go with like, yes, I crapped on the Monstruos 2 house, but I love the creature design. The El Kukui with the big mouth and the children's head inside.
Yes.
It's a shit. They had great creature design, but unfortunately they didn't use it. But I'm still going to give it to them. My honorable mention's going to go to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I didn't put that just because it's an IP, so I felt like it didn't deserve to go into like favorite character design. And the other one was The Weekend, because that is very original. It had like that Thing quality to it.
Yes.
The effects were beautiful. They realized his face and split him apart in so many different and odd ways that it gets another special mention. So, but for me, Monstruos 2, I love those creature designs. If we were allowed to put in scare zones, I probably would have chose something different, but I'm going to say Monstruos 2.
My favorite creature design across the board, I think I'm going to give to Dead Exposure Death Valley, simply by virtue of the fact that it has the gorilla whose brain is exposed, who's been a science experiment. That fucking character is the character of the event. If there's a mascot for this year, that's the mascot. I don't know what his name is. The giant gorilla in Dead Exposure takes the cake for me, but plus you've got other cool bits like Meltman I thought looked amazing. You also have some of the other monkeys in the cages. You have the people in the cooling room. Awesome creature design. And for me to say that about a zombie house is nuts. That's how inventive that house is. My honorable mention for that, for creature design, goes to The Weekend for the same reason that Mark was saying. It's a body horror house, and they pay off on that. There is something that is really disgusting. It's like a fucking Lovecraftian fusion of like 3 beings together that comes out at the end of the maze that is horrifying. So that's I would say honorable mention Weekend, winner Dead Exposure Death Valley. Mark, here's a tough one. Best sets / scenic. Best sets
that one was easy
scenic.
For me. I go with Dead Exposure Death Valley, and my honorable mention is Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. All right.
I love Dead Exposure.
I'm gonna
so
go
much to look through.
I'm gonna echo what Mark said. I'm also going best sets, best scenic, Dead Exposure, because it was just so fucking crazy. Like, inventive and awesome in all the right ways. And my honorable mention goes to Leatherface, because that processing plant, the slaughterhouse, those were truly immersive.
Yeah.
Like Mark says, it's a bit of a cheat because it's an IP, but I mean, it doesn't change the fact that you're in it. Like that had some of the best scenic of the event, I thought.
The build quality was fantastic for that. And like the way they captured the atmosphere was perfect. But
best effects? Best effects. This doesn't have to be scares overall, just gags, effects, cool special effects, best effects.
Mine goes to A Quiet Place just because it had the sheer amount of animatronics that look like, they looked screen real. That was once you get to that one room, I mean, I guess I should have put this one for best sets too, because once you get to that communication room and there's like the what do they call them? Death Angels, you said?
Yeah, the Death Angels.
Yeah, so there's a Death Angel that's underneath the staircase. It's fully exposed and it just feels like it's there staring at you and you want to like kind of go around it. So I'm going to give that one for best effects. And you know what, the Weekend gets a honorable mention because I love what they did with lighting in there and how they confused the people going through the maze itself.
Yeah,
I thought that was very effective.
I'm actually going to flip mine. I would give best effects to The Weekend because it not only utilized great gore effects and physical practical effects, but also, as Mark said, it was disorienting. The way that they're able to use lighting effects simply to like fuck with your perception of what's going on. Also, the creature design in it, the mask design of the performers, really original, fresh. And my honorable mention, it's got to go to Quiet Place because those animatronics were just like incredible. All right, now this doesn't have to be so much a house; it can just be a single moment for you if you want. Best scare. What's your best? I think I know what it is, but what's your best scare of the event?
Mine, I put Insidious the Further as the that ending bit. I think that one for me, and I gave an honorable mention to. I did give one to a scare zone, but I won't mention that because this is all houses. So I'm going to say my other good scare actually came from the Texas Chainsaw house. I had one Leatherface guy just pop out of nowhere, and he looked exactly like the Leatherface you see on screen. He was huge. He was like a foot taller than me, had a big-ass chainsaw, the apron. I felt like I was in the movie, so I have to give it to that one. Even though, it's down low on the list, and maybe I said it was not as populated, but the one time it got me, it worked really well.
Well, dude, I'm right there with you. My favorite scare of the event was from Texas Chainsaws when I was talking shit, and I turned to Mark and I said, this fucking maze doesn't have anybody in it. Where are the actors? And the minute I said that fucking guy came running out of the trees right at me just to, like, basically make me eat crow. To be like, hey, fuck you. Here we are, asshole. And he got me.
That was fucking hilarious.
It was fucking great. That's my favorite scare of the event was that Leatherface scare. Those fucking guys got me bad, dude. All right, are we ready to move into zones really quick? There's only There's only 4 scare zones. And I think let me just quickly set them up for people. I would posit that
there were only 3.
There really are only 3 because one's a chainsaw zone. They can't really count that.
No, I put in. I'll let you go. Actually,
hang on. Let me pipe these in because I want to make sure I got the right names for things. Hang on. Here we go. All right, I got the names. I'll go like this. I mean, I think the bottom one's very easy. My number 4 is Chainsaw Punks. It's not even a zone. It's the entry performers with chainsaws. I like the way they looked. They had the 80s punker thing with the mohawks and the studded leather and stuff. They looked the part. It's a chainsaw zone. Not that exciting for me. Oh, maybe that's what we'll do. I'll run through mine and then we'll turn it over to you. My number 3 was Murder of Crows. My number 3 was only because here's the thing. The puppets were really cool. They're these stilt performers that are these giant crow people, and there's different crow characters. They don't all look identical. One of them is Edgar Allan Crow, and he's got a fucking top hat. Another one has another funny crow name. I don't know what they are. The only reason I put this at 3 was because I never got a good interaction with them. The crows were always fucking with other people. So I was always an outsider looking in. I was always like, oh, cool, look at how cool that looks. Trying to get a decent moment with them. It never happened. My number 2 was Skull Lords, which was like this medieval zone with these people who, you know, had skull faces. I had a lot of interaction with these people. Did not intend to. Didn't even realize I was in their zone half the time until I would randomly see one of them, like this red skull face guy, like creep up behind Mark, like, ugh! Like,
or there was like a woman with a cape too, right?
Yes.
Or she in the red with a big sword.
Yes. And then also there was a still performer who was like the Skull Lord who actually welcomed our group into the event the second night. And then she proceeded to try to kick me in the face.
That's right.
And my number 1...
You got drop kicked like 50 times.
I got drop kicked so many times. And the reason I got drop kicked a bunch was because we hung out in the wrestling scare zone the most. And it was the best. It's called Luchadores Monstruos. Listen to this. If you don't love this, you're fucking crazy. It's classic
or you don't
monsters.
Like fun.
Yeah, you don't like fun. It's classic monsters dressed up as lucha libre wrestlers, Mexican wrestlers,
so cool.
With the crazy ass colored masks, luchador masks, the wrestling pants. There's a fucking wrestling ring in the middle of the scare zone with like creatures wrestling in it. And these fucking people were so awesome. I want to give a shout out to every scare actor in that zone. All of you guys were incredible. I want to give a shout out to the
Especially
Gill
the
Man and Wolfman, who I think they started to recognize us because Mark and I were hanging out there for hours each night. We had so much fun with them. They started to recognize us because they started to try to challenge us to wrestling moves. They would keep coming up to us and interacting with us. They were great.
We couldn't even tell they were behind us half the time.
Dude, the actors in that zone are the best actors, or my favorite actors at the event. They're having the most fun. The creature design is inspired and so fun. This is just fun. That's the word of the day with this fucking scare zone. I had the best time, and honestly, even above the mazes, the haunted houses themselves, I think this was my favorite thing I experienced at HHN 2024 this year. I think it was the Luchador Scare Zone. So that's my number 1. Mark, what do you got?
I have Skull Lords only because it's like once you get past the entrance, you just don't see them anymore.
You're like, peace.
Then I did Murder of Crows only because there's just 2 of them in the nest, and there were some fun moments with them, but they were kind of just doing their own thing, and it just felt more like an attraction. They weren't really scared, and of course, the other reason why it's third, this thing sounds terrible, and I understand they need the support. But with the crows, there was just always someone there with a flashlight so they wouldn't fall over.
Oh, yeah, they have a handler.
Part of it kind of like takes you out of the experience because there's like, and the other person's just like, no flash. So that one was the least interactive, I thought. Then I'm going to go for Chainsaw Punks just because the design was dope. And there's something special. To me, yeah, it happens every year, but there's something, I mean, I even got the shirt, so. To me, it's just special to see these guys. Yeah, it's like, it seems like it's the same old with just different costumes, but it sets up the mood. You smell it's one of those things where it's like the Texas Chainsaw House. The smell helps you get like immersed in the environment. So this one is when I smell that, like the fuel burning off the engine. There's something like this. It's nostalgic to me because that was my first experience with HHN with Matt in the balcony waiting for our tour to start, and you're just watching these guys tear through, and they're really good at what they do. They're just constantly scaring people. So I love that. And then of course number 1 is the same as Matt, which is the Luchadors, and that was like Matt, I'm just going to echo what Matt said, so there's no real point of me going. I'm just going to gush about how cool it was and how much fun it is to just, you get your meal and you're just, you have to wait for other people to finish, but once you're in this scare zone, you're kind of like, I hope you guys eat forever because I just want to hang out with these dudes. It's the place where you get actually, when you're walking through the maze, you just see these actors. They're there and over. This one, you actually get to see how detailed they are, how fun these people are that are playing these creatures, how immersive it is. The zone itself is super fun. I echo Matt as well if I could have put this in my house's list, this would totally be number 1 because I think Matt and I were just laughing. My face and throat hurt just from hanging out in this zone. Even if they weren't scaring us, you could just watch them terrify other people, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was fucking incredible, dude. They were the best. My favorite cast. my favorite monsters. They were just incredible.
Best
Mark,
experience, by the way, I would say that's one of the best experiences. Even in Orlando, that was one of the best experiences. And all 4 of our trips,
it's the best scare zone
out there
I've ever been in. And I thought nothing would top Momias from last year, which was in the same place, same location.
Yeah.
Something about that location is magical. It's that location. I want to say it's on
Momias for
Market
us,
Street.
we talked about that a lot. So that's a lot of hype to beat for the next year, and it totally did.
And they did
leveled Momias, yeah.
Luchadors were fucking incredible, and also too, you've got they embraced the 60s, 70s lucha libre style. Like they even on those Mexican wrestler movies like El Santo, like they had posters made, vintage looking 70s Mexican wrestling posters with the monsters. I wish I could have gotten all those posters. They're incredible. That would have been
so cool.
It's just the coolest fucking scare zone I've ever been in, dude. I've ever been in. It was fucking great. I loved it. Shout out to all the luchadors. You guys are the best. Mark,
it's the perfect representation of the event.
It is.
They scare you. It's super fun, and it's just like you just want to stay there, and you don't want it to be over.
No.
So thanks again, Matt, for planning this trip out, because I fucking loved it.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for coming. Any final thoughts from you on the event this year before we close this bitch up?
I would say, of all the years we've been, this was the best strategy. I loved going there with just the 2 of us in the express lanes, just kind of doing our own thing. And I also love the fact that the next night is you get the HHN, the true RIP tour experience, and you get a little bit of exclusives here and there. I think we did it right. I think this was the best HHN experience we've had so far, and I can't wait for the next one.
I would agree, man. Actually, I don't have anything to add. I think if anything, that's what I was going to ask you. Was there a moment where you missed, because last year we did Knott's and we kind of branched out? I'm going to tell you, as much as I liked Knott's, I didn't miss it this year. There's not enough new at Knott's this year to make me want to go. I want to give them a couple of years so they got some new, at least 2 more new houses. Then you've got 4 or 5. But I was just
wail the idiot children at the front
and just give through all the kids and the babies. I personally loved, my favorite thing was just having multiple nights at the event, because people who are local, you pass holders or people who have frequent fear passes, you guys are lucky, man, that you can go to drop into the event any weekend you want. I have to travel. Mark and I have to travel to get here for one weekend. If I could go to this every weekend for a month, I would be fucking ecstatic. So I'm super happy. I think in the future that that would be my preference to do 2 nights at least at the event.
Well, think about it this way. It felt because in prior events, sometimes it felt oh man, what if this is the last time you get to experience this house and you had a bad run through, even though it looked cool. That was it, and then you'd have to hope that it either came back. This is the first time we got to actually go through a house multiple times and see how it functioned. Even if we got a bad run through, we still could go back. So I think I prefer that over going to Knott's, because you actually get to experience the top houses, because they're the best in the game anyway. So you might as well try and go through as many times as you can so you can get that perfect experience.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think moving forward, it'll be a multi-night event for us, for sure. That's it. I think we're going to skip Rex this week. We haven't been watching much, and we're already almost at the 2-hour mark.
Matt and I had a fun time making fun of the whole Godfather trilogy, so I guess we could wreck that, and that's good.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun, dude. I was thinking about how good the Coda version of Godfather 3 is. But yeah, that's really it. We're already approaching 2 hours. I don't want to crash it too hard. We'll be back next week with our usual format. Tommy will return. I'm sure he's got a lot to say. Very excited for that guy. Yeah, I think that's it. Mark, anything else before we wrap up, dude?
That's it. I think that's it. I mean, I think I gushed about it way too much.
All I gotta say is to sever the bloodline, aim for the heart. That's it. It was amazing. HHN 24. That's a wrap on the event. Halloween Horror Nights. I'm already counting down till next year, dude. I'm already planning next year. I'm already fucking excited about it.
It's going to be a special one, too, because think about it. It'll be 2025, and it'll be our 5th time going. And multiples of 5 are always my favorite, so I think it's going to be spectacular.
That's true. That's true. I didn't know you were a multiple of 5 guy. Is that true?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So then how frustrating was the TV in the room for you with the volume that would go from 8 to 12 to 13? Like, had no fucking logic
13.
behind the volume counter? Did that fucking just irritate the shit out of you then?
When you first said that, I thought you were joking, and then I started using it. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
This is the biggest piece of shit TV. LG TVs, you suck. Hey, Mark, that's it for us. We're out of here. Peace.
Ends.